I'd like to kick off the demo track by introducing our first demo, Turning Video Calls into Health Sensors by Achuta Kadambi and Laleh Jalilian from UCLA. Team, if you could please turn on your videos but stay muted. And Ryan, if we could please start the timer.
Good morning. We're here to present a method to turn video calls like this into a richer source of health information. My name is Achuta Kadambi, and I'm an assistant professor of electrical engineering and computer science at UCLA.
And my name is Dr. Laleh Jalilian, and I'm a clinical assistant professor at the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA. Here's the problem we're trying to solve. Patients who seek a clinical evaluation for common medical conditions are told to visit a clinic for an in-person appointment. There, they are evaluated on the basis of their symptoms and their vital signs. Unfortunately, in-person visits result in the congregation of patients in clinic waiting areas, which may contribute to spread of infection to other patients and healthcare workers. Also, the need for in-person visits may exacerbate disparities for patients who don't have access to clinic resources. Finally, many in-person visits may result in patients being sent home to self-monitor. Can doctors provide high-quality medical evaluations remotely using both patient symptom data and remote assessment of vital signs? What if there could be a way to get vital signs directly from telemedicine video data of a patient during a telemedicine visit? That would be a medical game changer for remote care, but it requires new technology to be invented.
To change the game, we created an invention that turns video calls into health monitors. Video calls are contact-free and relatively equitable. 4 billion people have access to smartphones today. We imagine a future where vital signs are extracted from video calls to create new capabilities for telemedicine. But there's a problem. We need to see what is invisible to smartphones today. Sure, this might work on a friend who is light-skinned. We can see her blush with the naked eye, but sensing blood changes through opaque skin is a much harder problem. A clinical solution must work on all skin types if it can be rolled out. To address this problem, we have brought world-class imaging engineers and clinical doctors together from the UCLA Schools of Engineering and Medicine. Here's an example of what we have built in the lab. The large display is a Philips MX800 health monitor. It's the official health monitor used in many clinics today, including at UCLA. On the subject's finger is a pulse oximetry lead right here. This pulse oximetry lead is a wired method to ground truth obtain the beat-to-beat waveform of the heart rate. You can see that the heart rate should be in the mid-50s, 55 beats per minute. The small rectangle also shown in the subject's view is actually a smartphone. It's a Samsung Galaxy S10, for those of you who are cell phone fans. This is a consumer device which enables us to actually zoom in just via the camera's video and extract, using an algorithm, the tiny changes in the blood flow of the face. The end result is we're able to obtain a very similar beat-to-beat waveform that is predicting a heart rate that is nearly identical to the clinical standard. This is within 2 beats per minute, which is widely considered to be clinically accurate. In contrast to previous work, our work is enabled by identifying patterns of pixels that are validated through an IRB study of many subjects, many of which who have diverse skin tones. The carefully chosen pattern serves as an anchor for signal aggregation. The end result is the unveiling of a very difficult to detect signal. This is the first method that we know of to boost signals from opaque skin tones.
Remember the finger pulse oximeter that Achuta was showing in the demo? We used that for ground truth of heart rate. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to ship those pulse oximeters to telemedicine patients at UCLA in order to get heart rate data. If we could obtain heart rate estimates through real-time video, it would be a powerful tool that would provide doctors with vital sign data during a telemedicine visit. This information will greatly assist in the diagnosis of the most common medical conditions, such as COPD exacerbations, sepsis, and arrhythmias. The claims of our provisional patent with TDG encompass a platform approach that measures key vital signs. There is an IP onion spanning privacy-preserving algorithms, multimodal sensing, and ultimately creating a health data hub. We believe our initial invention is just scratching the surface of what's possible, and we look forward to nurturing it to deployment. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Team, if you are here, if you could please unmute yourselves and introduce yourselves to our judges.
Hi, I'm Achuta Kadambi. I'm a faculty member in electrical engineering and computer science at UCLA.
I'm Dr. Laleh Jalilian. I'm a clinical assistant professor in the David Geffen School of Medicine in the Department of Anesthesiology.
Great. Thanks for being here with us. As we open up questions, I'd like to first ask the judges if they have any questions for our team. And then for the audience, if you do have any questions, please include them in the chat. And then as time allows, we can either ask them for you, or if you prefer to ask your questions live, just please mention that in your comment as well.
Hi, Laleh. Hi, Achuta. Good to see you. Do you think you can also use this to detect oxygenation? Because pulse ox also testing the oxygenation.
Yeah, so, Laleh, since we're remote, kind of will coordinate who answers the questions, but I'll just take a stab because I see you're muted. We expect that video will be able to assess 4 vital signs, and one of those does include oxygenation. And the principles will be very similar to how pulse ox works, which is ultimately like a single pixel version of a video of how a pulse ox ordinarily gets oxygenation.
Yeah, and probably a question here for Dr. Jalilian. Have you guys thought through the white coat effects? And is there even a white coat effect for a patient that's seeing a doctor through a telehealth call?
Yes, that's a great question. I think since the COVID-19 pandemic, because we're not able to get heart rate estimations remotely, it's unclear at this point if there is a white coat effect from a remote virtual visit. As far as I know, I don't know any studies actually that have looked at that. For patients who do have blood pressure cuffs at home, it would be interesting to look at, but I'm not aware of any studies that show if there is or is not a white coat effect from a virtual visit.
I had a question about your algorithm and training for this. It's fantastic to be able to solve this problem of color skin tone. Did you all create your own data sets for training, or were you using standard image data sets, or how were you training your?
Yeah, so I'll take this question. It turns out that unfortunately, this field is so recent that the data sets that exist don't actually have a variation in skin tone. So most of the data sets that exist are Caucasian, and we suspect this is largely due to feasibility. The previous work was published in electrical engineering, computer science, where kind of showing that first result is really key. So we had to actually go and create a new data set to make this happen. And then in that process of creating a data set of a more diverse population, which is something that I think Dr. Jalilian really believes in, given the patients that she sees, she wouldn't have signed up to work with us if we didn't have a diverse patient set. But I think this is a real nice area where diversity, where you actually enforce diversity in your design, actually creates a technical innovation, because we realized that fundamentally there was this huge gap. And it's obvious in hindsight, right? Dark skin blocks light, so it just doesn't work as well on dark skin. And so that gave us a very exciting problem to solve. And absolutely, to answer your question, we did have to go and create a new data set to make this happen.
I would also like to add to that. Ever since COVID-19, there's actually been more the medical community has taken a lens on current medical technology. There was a very good paper published out of the University of Michigan that shows that patients who have darker skin tones, their pulse oximetry readings are actually more inaccurate than patients with fairer skin tones. So for a clinician, quality and having high quality estimates of vital signs is very important. And to do that, our training data set needed to be diverse. So to echo Achuta, we had to recruit a diverse population of volunteers.
I mean, you know, on a side note, there's value just in that data set and having created it. So that's great that you created.
Have you guys had any I know this is pretty new and novel. Have you had any discussions with any potential partners around this, or where do you see the next step with this, I suppose?
Yeah, maybe since I'm unmuted, I'll take this one again. I think it's very important. I think there's two steps to this. I think the first step is we need to get medical practitioners to buy into this. This is kind of a little bit of a disruptive technology. It's not fully trusted. And a lot of the physicians that we have spoken to, we see a mix. Some physicians are excited. Some physicians are skeptical and didn't believe that this would work at first. So I think the first step is to convince them. And at UCLA, I think that's a great part of the ecosystem as we have access to physicians. The second step is once we have studies, IRB results, and physicians who have committed to potentially using such a platform, then I think we would probably look at a licensing path. This would probably be more of a licensing path because there's a lot of infrastructure already around secure telemedicine and making these visits happen, but they don't use this missing ingredient of computer vision algorithms. So we would probably license this strategically to partners. And we're kind of starting discussions with a few, thanks to our friends at TDG. But I think this is going to be, this is probably the play, is a licensing play rather than a standalone. I don't know, Dr. Jalilian, if you want to add anything to that.
Yes, no, I agree with everything Achuta said. I have nothing to add there.
I have one quick question. I was just curious about, since there's a reliance on the video pixels here, how do you handle a situation that you can't necessarily control, like a patient who has a lot of movement going on and also a lot of different lighting changes that might be occurring?
Yeah, so that's a great question. In fact, that's part of the disclosure as well as the initial paper we're preparing is exactly that. We look at, okay, how does the variation in lighting affect these results? How does somebody talking, if somebody's talking like I am now, my mouth is moving, which causes a frequency dependent variation in my face that is due to the oscillations of sound rather than my heartbeat. So how do we tease those out? So long story short, there's a very, very exciting problem called the cocktail party problem. I don't know if you've heard of it, but the cocktail party problem is this. It's a classic electrical engineering problem. So back in the 50s, there were these soirees at Bell Labs because that's how those engineers used to live. And so they had these soirees and they'd have a bunch of conversations happening. And the cocktail party problem was if you're given a group of microphones, how do you essentially go and isolate the conversations? Because you're measuring the sum of all conversations that are happening at a party. If the microphones are placed in spatially different locations, there's a different mix that's happening. And based on that different mix, you can tease out each individual conversation. That's the same approach we use here, but instead of microphones, we use pixels. So we use different pixels, which are looking at different parts of the face, which are receiving different combinations of the heartbeat as well as interference signals. And based on that, we're able to tease it out and extract out the heartbeat.
Thank you.
Great. I think we have time to take one quick question from the audience. The question is, does this technology require smartphone camera calibration?
Yeah, let me take that question as well. It looks like it's from Madhuri Suthar, who's I think she's just getting her PhD, so we Dr. Suthar. Yes, it requires something called radiometric calibration. Radiometric calibration is basically you need to actually understand how many photons does the pixel value of brightness correspond to. Now, with an ordinary smartphone, you don't have access to this information, so you need to do kind of a one-shot calibration. longer term, I think we need to look at this as part of that licensing package, where we need to actually identify the model of the smartphone and apply kind of a pre-selected calibration file to do radiometric calibration. I think it should work because we have enough, like we don't have that many smartphones, like there's iPhone, there's a few Galaxies, and there's a few others. And especially the camera modules are very common, actually. There's only like 3 to 5 different camera modules that are used. Like 5 different Android companies use the same Sony IMX module. So I think we just need a quick file for that, and it'll be kind of a lookup table. But yes, you do need to do calibration. Without calibration, all of this would be invalid. But it's just a one-shot calibration, and it's a pretty simple calibration that happens.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Kadambi and Jalilian, for being with us here today. If you could go ahead and turn off your videos now, please. I'd like to get into our next demo.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.